It's time to start solving quadratic equations, and the first way you'll learn how to do it is with graphing. Alright, here's the problem that we'll be doing in this video. We have the equation x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0, and we need to solve for x. Now, we can't solve for x the normal way, because normally in an algebra equation, you would try to get x by itself, and then see what x is. But in this case, not only do we have two x's, but we have one that's squared and one that's not squared, and we can't combine these. There's no way to combine them. So we're never going to get x by itself. But there's another way to figure out what x is equal to, and that is if we graph this equation, anytime it crosses the x-axis, that's this vertical line here, then we can figure out what x is equal to. And the reason that we can do that is this equals 0 here. You see how this is normally y equals x squared minus x minus 6, but in this case it's equals 0. So that means y is 0. And along the x-axis, that's where y is 0. We're not going up or down at all. So how do we graph this? Well, the form for every quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, if you have no idea how to graph one of these quadratic equations, I do already have a video on it that you can watch on the card on the screen right now, but I'll also review how to do it here. So what do each of these letters mean? Well, C is the y-intercept. This is going to be where it crosses the y-axis here. And A and B are both going to be used to help us find our axis of symmetry, which we'll get to later. So what is C? Well, C, you might be going, oh, well, C is 6, right? Because 6 is where C is. But you always have to include the sign. So it's actually going to be minus 6. So that's where it crosses the y-axis. So we're going to start in the middle, and we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's going to be a point right here. That's where it crosses the y-axis. So now let's find our axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is basically where the graph is symmetrical. It's like a mirror, and I'll show you what that means in a second. So the equation for the axis of symmetry is always negative b over 2a. So what is b? Well, b, you'll see we don't have a number in front of x, but remember that if we don't have a number in front of a letter, then that means it's 1. So in this case, b is not 1, negative 1. Remember, we have a negative sign here. So in this case, it's going to be negative, negative 1. Or in that case, two negatives make a positive. So we'll just write positive 1. And now 2a, well, that's going to be 2. And then what's a? Well, a, there's also not a number in front of here, so it's just going to be 1. So a is 1. So we have 1 over 2 times 1, which is 1/2. So this means that our axis of symmetry, 1/2 here, is going to be where the mirror is. And remember, that mirror is going to be like an up and down line. If we start in the middle and we're going to go to the right, because x means left and right, we're going to go to the right 1/2 of a box. So right here, we're going to draw an up and down line here. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we know where our mirror is. It's right here. And we also know that the vertex is going to be on this line. The vertex is basically just like the bottom of the bowl shape that we're going to be graphing. So to be able to figure out where our vertex is, we need to plug 1/2 into this equation and figure out what we get for y. And in this case, there is no y, but that's because we replaced y with 0. So we're going to put y instead of 0 for this equation. So we're going to put 1/2 for each of these x's. So x squared is now going to be 1/2 squared. And then we have minus 1/2 minus 6 is equal to y. And we're going to figure out what y is. So 1/2 squared, well, that's 1/2 times 1/2. And whenever you are multiplying two fractions, you multiply the tops and the bottoms. So 1/2 times 1/2, that's 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 is 4. So 1/4. And now minus 1/2 minus 6. And now we have 1/4 minus 1/2. Well, we're going to have to get a common denominator here, right? So we will multiply 1/2, we'll multiply the top and the bottom by 2. So we get, instead of 1, we'll get 2, and instead of 2, we'll get 4. So now we have a common denominator. And when you're adding or subtracting fractions, you have to make sure the denominators are the same, and then the denominator just stays the same, and you add or subtract the tops. So 1 minus 2 is negative 1, and then over 4. So we're going to have negative 1 over 4 minus 6. Now, we could figure out the improper fraction for this and all of that, but if you want to make your life easier just because we're graphing, all you have to do is just say, okay, well, this is minus 6, so we've lost 6, and then we've lost another 1/4. So we've lost a total of 6 and 1/4. So that is going to be the y value for this mirror, this axis of symmetry. So we're going to start in the middle at the axis of symmetry, and we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a 4th. So that's going to be about here. All right, so now if we were just graphing the parabola, we would say we need 5 points to make it the most accurate for graphing. But in this case, we're just going to use however many points we need to figure out exactly where it crosses this line. Because wherever it crosses this line is going to be what x is equal to. So first of all, I know that because this is a mirror image, because we have a point here, remember from the beginning, we know that there has to also be a point right here, because this red line is a mirror and the points are mirror images of each other. So now let's go ahead and plot some more points. Let's go ahead and do it like right here. So here would be x equals 2 because it's 2 squares from the middle. So let's figure out where we would plot a point here. And the way we do that is basically by doing what we did before. We're going to plug in 2 into this equation and see what we get. So instead of x, we're going to have 2 squared minus, instead of x, we're going to have 2, and then minus 6. So 2 squared, that's 2 times 2, which is 4, minus 2 minus 6. And now 4 minus 2 is 2. And then 2 minus 6, we had $2, and we lost $6, so we're down $4. So we know that here, y is going to be equal to negative 4 on x equals 2. So we're going to go at x equals 2, and we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to plot a point here. And now because we know that this is a mirror image, we can plot a point exactly on the other side of the mirror, which would be right here. And the way that you would know that it goes right here is because the distance between the mirror and this point here is 1.5 squares. So we go 1.5 squares the other way as well. So now this would be enough points to just graph our parabola, but because we want to get the exact numbers if possible, we'll go ahead and graph a couple more points just to make sure. So let's go ahead and plot a point on right here. This is x equals 3 because it's 3 from the middle. So let's see what we get for 3. So we have 3 squared minus 3 minus 6. 3 squared, that's 3 times 3, which is 9. 9 minus 3 is 6. And then 6 minus 6 is 0. So y is going to be equal to 0. So at x equals 3, that's 3 to the right from the middle, we're going to have y equals 0. And y equals 0 means we're not going up or down at all. So we're just going to plot it right here. So you'll notice this is actually going to be one of our answers because it crosses the x-axis here. But remember, we do have a mirror image. So this is 2.5 squares from the mirror. So we're going to have to go 2.5 squares this way as well. So there's going to be a point right here. So it looks like we found our 2 answers. And yes, whenever you have a quadratic equation, it is normal to have 2 answers. You won't always have 2 answers, but most of the time you will. So let's go ahead and draw our bowl shape. All right, well, this is probably the worst bowl-shaped graph I've ever drawn, but it's fine because it doesn't matter. We're just trying to figure out where it crosses the y-axis. So it does it right here and right here. So the last thing to do is to figure out the x values of these points. Well, this one we already know because we just did it, right? You start in the middle and go 1, 2, 3. So x equals 3 is going to be an answer. But we also have this one right here. So where's this one? Well, if you start in the middle, you have to go to the left, 1, 2. And remember, to the left is negative numbers. So this is going to be negative 2. So there you go. Our answers to this problem are negative 2 and 3. And if you wanted to check your work to make sure you did that right, all you'd have to do is plug in these numbers back into the equation and see if you get 0. So there you go. You now know how to graph parabolas and use it to solve quadratic equations. But you may have noticed that all of the numbers we used in this video were real. Wait, what? Wait, what do you mean they were real? Well, it turns out that solving quadratic equations can actually give you fake numbers. If you want to know what I'm even talking about, then you can watch this video right here, where I introduce you to imaginary numbers. And as always, if you have any questions about this video, go ahead and leave it in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer your question. Thanks for watching.